Scott was standing at the top of the hill, like where the driveway is, with both arms on his hips, just staring down at us. I just had this gut feeling that something was wrong.
At that point, did you suspect your mom?
Definitely.
And he was like, there's something in this burn pile. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Did you murder your father?
I absolutely did not murder my father.
Was it Melody or her son Scott who killed Gary Farris, or neither one? The defense continues making its case today that the prosecution got the wrong person. Plus, body language could reveal who's telling the truth. An expert joins us live to revisit testimony from Scott Farris. And a Utah mom is crying foul after being denied contact with her kids for allegedly killing her husband. The murder case of Jennifer Gledhill is what's trending in true crime. Plus, the family of Lori Vallow Daybell speaking out about her plan to act as her own attorney. Her uncle joins us live this hour. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning, friends. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. This show's like coffee and court. We get warmed up, it's morning time, and get all ready for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. Go ahead, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. More than an advocate. Prosecuting attorneys are more than just advocates. They are ministers of justice. And part of that special responsibility involves ensuring that there is sufficient evidence to move forward with a case, to follow the evidence wherever and to whomever it may lead. And I was thinking about this as I was watching the heartbreaking testimony in the Burnt Pile murder mystery case in Georgia, as Gary and Melody Farris's youngest daughter, Amanda, was testifying for the defense. Now, she is devastated about her father's death, but believes in her mother's innocence. And nobody can blame her for that, right? She loves her mom. Who could blame her? And of course, she loved her dad. Now, as the prosecutor was making his final points on the cross-examination, he got Amanda to admit that despite any feelings that she has to acknowledge what the evidence shows. These prosecutors in Georgia believe that they have sufficient evidence to prove that Melody Farris was the only person responsible for Gary's death. And they have to carry that burden legally in that court of law. So think about this. When you're an advocate, you push forward your legal theory and your position so that you win. But when you're also a minister of justice, you only push forward on what you know is right. I am proud to say that I withdrew numerous cases when I was a prosecutor because it was the right thing to do. And that's not something we hear a lot of prosecutors talking about, right? Sounds way cooler to talk about your trials, doesn't it, than talk about your null process. But it's part of the justice system. And I wanted to share this today in my opening statement today for you because it applies to every single criminal case that we watch together. So keep this in mind as we go forward, that the prosecutors you see have different duties than the defense attorneys. They have special legal and ethical obligations to make sure that justice is served. That's my opening statement this Tuesday. Let me know if you like it. Right now, I want to give you what's on your daily docket.
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it? Shame on you! Shame on you, Richard! You're going to prison for the rest of your life! Shame on you, Richard Allen!
It is day number 10 in the Delphi murders case of Richard Allen, but no cameras are allowed inside. Our Court TV senior producer, Barbara McDonald, is on the ground there for us, providing us updates. And we've got a new case we're tracking for you at Court TV, the granddaughter double murder case in Connecticut. Harley Swolls is accused in the stabbing deaths of her grandmother and her grandmother's boyfriend. Court's going to start up at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And the defense is expected to rest its case in the Burnt Pile murder trial. Court starts up at 9 a.m. in Georgia. We're going to take you there live when it does. And that is our top story here on Opening Statements today, as Melody Farris could take the stand. A very emotional day Monday as Amanda, her youngest daughter, testified in the case. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson has the latest.
Julie, good morning. Today's expected to be another big day because soon we could find out if Melody Farris plans to testify. Today is day 17 in the burn pile murder trial playing out north of Atlanta. The jury has heard from 43 witnesses over 4 weeks. Defendant Melody Farris is accused of killing her husband Gary, shooting him and throwing his body on the backyard burn pit at their multi-million-dollar farm. Her defense claims that her son is actually the real killer. On Monday, jurors heard from Amanda Farris Bruce. She's the last of the Farris children to take the stand.
And he goes, Amanda, like something to the tune of like, Daddy's in this burn pile. Like, I know what I've seen. I've been in Iraq. I know what burned bodies looked like. He came over and grabbed me by the arm as hard as he could, and he got in my face.
Who are we talking about?
Scott.
Okay.
He got in my face and he screamed at me. He said, I know what I saw. I know what it is, Amanda. And I was just, again, going like, what?
And it's fair to say that you're biased in favor of your mom. You have strong feelings both directions in this case. Is that fair?
I stand right in the middle, and I pray y'all can do your job and figure out what happened. I would hate to see her go to jail, prison. Nobody wants to see their mother in that situation.
And if Melody Farris does not take the stand, we expect sometime later today that the defense could rest their case in chief. Julie?
Matt Johnson, we'll be checking in with him later today. Thank you for that report. Now, let's talk about this further. What did you think of Amanda's testimony? Did you think it helped the defense or helped the prosecution? And what do you think Melody Farris is going to do today? I've got two great guests standing by. I want to bring them in now. Private investigator and retired Army counterintelligence officer Manuel Gomez and family law attorney Jennifer Brandt. Good morning to you both. Jennifer, I'd love to start with you, please. Legally, watching Amanda's testimony, I'm sure it broke your heart as it did so many of ours. What did you think it did for the case overall? Do you think it moved the ball forward for the defense any?
I did, because especially you've seen the other 3 children come out and testify in favor of the prosecution. So now we have Amanda who comes in, talks about her mother, talks about the relationship, and she also talked about her father and really painted a picture for us of who he was, you know, how she related to him as his child. She did stand in the middle, but I think her testimony showed that mom is not such a bad person. You know, the other children were just totally saying it must have been mom. It must have been mom. But Amanda comes in and she says, you know, I don't want to see my mom go to jail. I don't, you know, she really doesn't know. She's putting it on the jury. You need to decide. You need to look at all the evidence and you know, help to decide what really happened here. So I think she was very helpful, especially when you have the other 3 kind of going against their own mother.
Right, definitely, Jennifer, agree. Manuel, Amanda talked about walking down to that burn pile that day, that awful day, and seeing her brother Scott there. And we know that Scott is the sibling in particular that the defense is pointing the finger at. I have a clip for you about that piece of the testimony. Let's take a look.
I had walked down, and my mother came up shortly behind me, and I saw one stream of like smoke coming off of the top of it. And there was like one stick that was laying by the side, and I just picked it up and tossed it on there, and she was there, and I was like, it's still like smoldering. She was like, yeah, it's gonna be hot for a while, and I was like, okay. And I turned around and looked up, and Scott was standing at the top of the hill, like where the driveway is, with both arms on his hips, just staring down at us.
Oh, this is weird. There's some really weird testimony in this one. Manuel, tapping into your experience as an investigator for many years, curious if you have any theory about what may have happened to attorney Gary Farris.
Well, you know, one of the things that I found extremely interesting in this case is that the cell phone tower data showed Melody walking around the area of the burn pit. And then one of the conversations that the defense team is saying is that she wasn't strong enough to drag that body from the house to the burn pit because he was almost 300 pounds. But you see clearly due to the blood spots on the staircases and on the wood paneling that he was pulled up the stairs. And the thing that I found very interesting is that all the animals were let loose. And it wasn't for the reason for the animals to be loose. It was because one of the animals she had, which had the capability to pull that body from the basement, up the stairs, to the burn pit, was the horse. And if you look at crime scene photo 67, you'll see that that area was wide enough from the area from where he was living in the basement to accommodate the horse, and that the horse fence was right there. So, you know, the data shows from the cell phone tower that she was walking around that burn pit area and where the animals were, where the horse was. So it is my theory that she used that horse to pull him to that burn pit. And yes, it is also my professional opinion that she's guilty in this case.
Manuel, that is such a brilliant theory. If I could just stand up and give you a standing ovation right now, I would. That is so smart. I haven't heard anybody say anything like that involving the animals yet. I know Jennifer likes it too. I see her nodding, smiling. Jen, what do you think? Would you buy into that theory?
That's a great theory. I mean, I don't know. It sounds though, you know, you're dealing with animals and a situation where it would be out in the open. So, I mean, I think she would have a chance of being seen by other people. There were other people around. So I'm not so sure I agree with that theory, but it is an interesting one because certainly size-wise, she's much smaller than Gary. And you do wonder how she was able to pull the body to the burn pit if that is what happened. On the other hand, you got Scott Farris, you know, and she's pointing the finger at him, and he is a much bigger guy. So we really don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what the jury ultimately decides.
It sure is. I've got another clip here where Amanda is talking about the sins in the family, and guess where it all goes back to? The almighty dollar.
There was a lot of things that happened before that moment that I think should have been taken care of before just putting money on it to fix it. Okay. I think a lot of things that have happened in our family get swept under the rug, and they're never addressed, and they're not taken seriously. But a sin is a sin, and I feel like this is a repercussion of all the sins that were committed over years, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems that money, we always hear the expression, money is the root of all evil, right? It seems like this was the big problem with this family. Gary was the breadwinner, did very well for himself as a practicing attorney in Atlanta. And it seems that no matter which side you believe, if you believe the prosecution theory that it was Melody looking for his money, or the defense theory that it was one of the kids, probably Scott is what they're alleging, looking for money, it goes back to money. Manuel, tell me, what do you see here in terms of any culpability that this defense team is saying that Scott has? Because we've seen it before in trials. A few recent cases come to mind where the defense talks a big game, talks, and then when push comes to shove in the courtroom, they don't have the evidence, you know, and argument's one thing, but proof is another. Manuel, is Scott suspicious at all to you?
No, and the reason why I really don't find him suspicious as much as the mother is because throughout this case, they already showed the mother lie numerous times. For example, the lie regarding her with the boyfriend. He told the police that she had no boyfriend and she had no affair. Okay, there was no need to lie considering the fact that they were both separate, both living in two different areas of the home. And then she confirms it later on. And then the phone calls from the jail was quite interesting, showing that there was some type of intent to cover the aspect of what was going on. Okay, so if I want to say culpability, it has to be to the mother. I would not put it to the son at all.
I really love how you think, Manuel. The great analysis. Last question pertaining to Melody. I want to quickly touch on this. Jennifer Brand, today's the day that we could see her testify. Do you think we will? And what would you advise her to do if you were her counsel?
I think given Amanda's testimony, I don't think we need to hear from Melody. I think it could be a problem for her. So I would probably tell her, don't testify.
Yeah, tell Mama Melody, keep quiet. Her attorney's doing a really nice job. Jennifer Brand, Manuel Gomez, I'm so glad we have you both on the show. Stand by kindly for more questions, please. We're going to hit a break. Here is what's coming up next and what's trending in true crime.
The body has not yet been recovered, but based on the totality of the evidence that we were able to gather, we felt sufficiently comfortable that we had probable cause to warrant the filing of the charges that we did.
A Utah mom accused of killing her husband can't contact her children now. We'll talk about the bizarre twist, too, involving her parents. And Lori Vallow Daybell wants to represent herself at her upcoming homicide trial in Arizona. What does her family think about this? They've been put through so much. Her uncle joins us live.
We are in Georgia for the trial of a wife who's accused of killing her husband and then burning his remains.
When you see the opportunity and the motive, money, sex, new life.
Gary Farris was a very prominent Atlanta attorney.
It is common knowledge that they had affairs.
Defendant murdered and desecrated her own husband.
The Burn Pile Murder Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
In Utah, the search for Matthew Johnson's body continues. The case against his wife is what's trending in true crime. Jennifer Gledhill is accused of fatally shooting her sleeping husband and burying his body in an unknown location. Prosecutors allege that the killing happened after an argument over Jennifer's affair. The 41-year-old appeared in court on Friday. Her defense attorney argued for the lifting of a no-contact order between Gledhill and the couple's 3 kids.
There are other courts that are designed to handle that, courts that allow the children who should have an opportunity to have some sort of say, and they should be represented by someone like a guardian ad litem. This court, this venue, is not the place for that to happen.
The basis for this request is the fact that that this is an active and ongoing investigation. These children are, in fact, potential witnesses. And the state is, in fact, open to readdressing a no-contact order in the future once the investigation is more complete and the children on advice of potentially of a therapist.
I understand why Commissioner Olson put the pretrial protective order in place. I'm going to lift the pretrial protective order because I don't think that I think technically it could be in place, but I don't think that's the intent of the statute. However, I am going to put a no contact order in place, which I realize for now practically is the same thing, although it takes away some of the potential criminal penalty.
Now, the state claims that the children are potential witnesses in this ongoing investigation. So let's talk about how important is it to have that no contact order in place during the early stages of this prosecution of Jennifer Gledhill. I want to bring back in private investigator and former Army intelligence officer Manuel Gomez, family law attorney Jennifer Brandt, and want to welcome in now criminal defense attorney and former district attorney Matt Mangino. Good morning to you all. Matt, I'd love to start with you, if I may please. Having served as a DA in Pennsylvania, how critical is it to have that no contact order in place right now as investigators are still searching for Matthew Johnson's body?
Well, Julie, I think it's important, and we have to think about this is a strange situation. So the children are children of the victim. So they're victims in this case as well, but they're also the children of the defendant. So it's a bit unusual. I think what's important here is to keep the children who may be potential witnesses away from the defendant, in this case, their mother, who might have some influence on them with regard to, what they tell police or ultimately, how they might testify in this case. So although it's unusual, it's a mother and children, I think it's appropriate in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, most definitely. Thank you for that, Matt. And you're right, the kids, they are victims too. That's something really important to think about as well. And Jennifer Brandt, that brings me to my question for you, please. So many of us in our newsroom are talking about what happens to these kids now. So really want to tap into your experience as a family law attorney. What do you expect is going to happen with them as dad is believed to be dead and mom is believed to be the person who killed him?
It's so tragic for these children. I mean, not to, just looking at it from their perspective, not to have contact, losing their father and not having contact with their mother, and they're young children. I mean, the oldest is 11, so it's a very scary time. Now the grandparents are in trouble as well, so they don't even have the maternal grandparents to turn to at this point. They're with Child Protective Services. I believe they are with some family, and ultimately, if mom is found guilty and is sent to prison, the grandparents, if they're found guilty and dad is gone, these children may be placed with other relatives, other family members. Usually the state tries to put children with willing family who is able to take them, but their world has just turned completely upside down. Losing a parent, as Matt pointed out, they're victims in all of this, and then potentially losing their mom if she ends up going to prison for this crime. So it has upended their lives. They'll never be the same. The only good news is that they are young and they have a lot of years to sort of acclimate themselves to this situation. Hopefully they get into a stable situation and not a lot of moving around, which could certainly happen given the current situation. So it is tragic all around.
Yeah, most certainly. And you're right. Hopefully they have time to get the help that they need and trauma therapy very soon now. And I'm glad you brought up the grandparents, Jennifer, because we're going to be talking about that in just a couple of minutes. The maternal grandparents are in big trouble. But before we get there, Manuel Gomez, I want to ask you about this investigation in finding Matthew Johnson. Would you talk a little bit about some of the things that may be going on right now that the public's unaware of, but that investigators are doing to effort bringing him home?
Well, and in an investigation like this, one of the things we would do, and I know the investigators are doing, are checking all license plate readers, cell phone data towers, which will track the phones to show what location the wife was at during this time of the alleged murder. And not only that, but they would also be checking any of the area video cameras of the local community homes and so forth to see if that vehicle passed that location. So that's one of the main things that would be going on. As you saw, the same technique was used in the Melody Farris case, where they used the cell phone tower data to track her location. And that's what I'm assuming now is happening here. It's just they haven't announced it to the public yet because it's still ongoing.
Right, and thank you for drawing that comparison, Manuel. You're right, because the cell phone data there shows that Melody was there, present on the property at the time the homicide was committed. And so here, this could be very useful. Thank you. Let's talk about the parents. So now, Jennifer Gledhill's parents, their names are Thomas and Rosalie. They're being accused of helping their daughter clean up the crime scene. They're being accused of going to the home and helping clean up. So they're in custody now on 4 counts of obstruction of justice. These are second-degree felony offenses in Utah. Police say that bloodstains were found in the master bedroom that Jennifer and Matthew shared. Police searched the home. That's where they found them. And they also found a brand new mattress they say that Rosalie, the mother, bought. So we're asking, how damaging is this going to be to Jennifer Gledhill's case? Because her parents were now arrested and accused of being accomplices after the fact in helping clean up the crime scene. So how does that damage her homicide case? Let's bring back in our power panel. Matthew Mangino, let me go back to you. So now tapping into your experience as a criminal defense attorney, tell me what you're thinking about this.
Well, Julie, the first thing that comes to mind is the idea that you're covering up whatever occurred. So that has eliminated, some possible defenses, whatever they may be, if in fact, she goes to trial in this case, such as, self-defense or other things that you might try to raise in a case like this. You've covered it up. You brought your parents in, you cleaned up the house, you disposed of the body, you bought a new mattress. These are all sort of acknowledgments of guilt. You've cleaned up and tried to get rid of the evidence. If you were in some way acting in a manner to defend yourself or to protect yourself, those are out the window now. So those are important issues even for the trial, let alone the charges that the parents face for helping to clean up the crime scene.
Yeah, definitely. Jennifer Brandt, let me go to you next, please. Your thoughts on the grandparents' arrests.
Really so awful to hear about this, and that the grandparents were, I mean, it's a horrible situation to begin with, don't get me wrong, but then to bring in the grandparents and have them being involved, I mean, you can imagine that they were trying to help their daughter in this awful situation. But I agree with Matt. I mean, it doesn't look good for any of them at this point in time when you have them potentially cleaning up a murder or somebody dying there in the house. So it is troubling, and it looks like they're all in pretty hot water.
For sure. Manuel Gomez, take us home if you would, please. So does having the charges with the grandparents give investigators any leverage?
Absolutely. You have to look at three aspects here with the grandparents. Aspect number one, the grandparents deleted the cell phones the day prior and after the time of the murder. So they knew what they were doing, or they were informed on how to do it. Second, when they cleaned the area of the crime scene, they were using products which would destroy the DNA, which you see the back of the wall where the bed was, where the blood spatters was all covered in bleach. Okay, but as in every murder case, somebody always makes a mistake where that blood-stained spot was found underneath the bed, underneath the carpet. So they disregarded the carpet. They cleaned everything immaculately and destroyed everything. And one of the other things that I would do on the grandparents as an investigator is search what was their cell phone data usage regarding how to clean a crime scene and how to get away with this. A lot of times in these cases, you'll find data showing that they actually went online doing that. So I'm hoping the investigators are doing that in this case.
Right. Such great analysis from you all. Manuel Gomez, Jennifer Brandt, Matt Mangino, thank you all so much for your time and your expertise this morning. We'd love to have you all back very soon. And coming up next here on Opening Statements.
Did you murder your father?
I absolutely did not murder my father. Without a doubt, I loved him.
You used that .357 to shoot your father, did you not?
No, because I never shot my father.
A body language expert's helping us take another look at the testimony of Scott Farris to assess if he was telling the truth. But up next, Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle joins us live to talk about her plans to act as her own attorney. This morning, we're turning the spotlight on doomsday mom Lori Vallow Daybell, who wants to represent herself as she goes on trial in Arizona for the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. She's also currently serving 3 consecutive life sentences for the murders of her 2 kids, J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, and the murder of her then-boyfriend's wife, Tammy Daybell. Now, Lori's late brother, Alex Cox, shot and killed Charles Vallow back in 2018, and he claimed self-defense to investigators. Vallow now has been determined to have her competency in question. So the judge has ordered a competency evaluation. So that is going to delay any decision as to whether or not Lori Vallow Daybell can represent herself at this trial. So what do you think about this move, the move to get rid of her very competent lawyers in Arizona and go pro se at this trial? Is it a stall tactic? What is it? We want to welcome in a special guest, someone very close to this case and close to all of the victims, Lori Vallow's uncle, Rex Connor. Rex, good morning to you. Thank you for joining us again on the show.
Good morning.
What do you think? So starting with the first question, everybody going, what is this move all about? What do you think it is?
Well, fortunately, I am so far out of Lori's mind that I don't know what it's about. What I hope it's not about, and I'm afraid it is subjecting all of us to the painful dribble that comes out of her mouth when we hear her speak, which up till now has been very limited. It was limited to her what she chose to say at her sentencing, and then recently her son Colby had an interview with her, which he bravely shared with all of us. None of us want to hear more of that. I hope it's not that, but I'm afraid that's what it is.
Right. You know, I have a clip. I think it came to mind for me, and I'm sure everybody watching this interview right now, Rex, what she said at sentencing. I mean, it was bizarre. Let's go back and look at a small portion of it together now.
JJ visited me after he passed away. He put his arm around me and he said to me, "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. I love you. And I know you loved me every minute of my life."
Rex, I think what's hard for a lot of people who followed this trial and have just wondered whether this is manipulation, an effort to manipulate, or whether it's true delusion. What do you think is going on with her when you hear her say something like that?
That's a tough one. Again, not being in her heart and mind, but it is very manipulative, whether that's the intent or not. But it is also evil. This is just, we are witnessing pure evil. Someone doing something just for wicked, evil purposes to inflict as much damage as can be inflicted on everyone who's even a little bit emotionally involved in this. So yes, that's manipulative, but my take on it is the pure evil, regardless of what other labels you put on it.
Sure, and we appreciate you being so honest, Rex. I've said it before, I'll say it again. You've been such a tremendous champion for those children, for JJ and Tylee, and you're podcasting about it, the Silver Linings podcast, to keep their memories alive and make sure people know they didn't die in vain. And I'm curious, as you know, as this case progresses, and as we've seen her last case in Idaho progress, you know, there are waves, right? There are waves where there's a lot of media attention, and then things may get a little quiet, and then she's front and center again, like right now, everybody's talking about it. During the times when it's quiet, you know, since her conviction in Idaho, has she made any attempts to send any letters to you or any of her other loved ones and try to even explain this or apologize in any way for it?
None that I'm aware of. There are people in the family that talk to her. We don't talk about it very much in the family, extended family, so I'm not privy to those. No one is, quote, on her side, giving her support, other than, you know, you still love a person that you've known and loved your whole life. Love is not conditional, but the relationship is, and no one wants a relationship supporting the evil that she's perpetrated. So I'm not familiar with those, but of course her son Colby had that interview recently that he released, and I think that's the best look we've all had inside of what's still going on inside of her.
Right. You know, Rex, when this trial does roll around in Arizona, at some point it'll happen. We don't know if the competency will delay things, if she's deemed incompetent, as you know, but whenever that day comes, how closely will you be following this case? Do you intend to go in person? Do you intend to watch the evidence in person like you did in the last trial in Idaho?
I wish I had the strength of some family members, one of my daughters in particular that used to nanny for Lori, and just does not involve herself emotionally, not from a place of denial, but just saying the bar's so low, her expectations are so low, she doesn't need to hear any of it. I'm not that way. I'm afraid I'm going to still be involved to some degree, still go to some of the trial. If any of my daughters, any of my family members want to go and want someone there to be with them, I'll be there. I won't go out of my own curiosity because it's an emotional toll that I don't know how to explain to other people. There are people that criticize family members, particularly her immediate family members, for not being in court to support Tylee or JJ or whatever. People that make that kind of criticism don't understand the toll it takes just to sit in that room during the court. So I'm willing to be there for other people. I won't be in person just for myself, but it's wonderful to go and be with Kay and Larry and the law enforcement people that were involved and to enjoy that fellowship in this tragic cause. So yes, I'm afraid I will be involved to some degree.
And really appreciate everything you said, Rex. The wonderful people that you've connected with through this tragedy, like the Woodcocks, you know, that is the one good thing that's come out of this horrific nightmare is the connections with the good, loving people like yourself. And appreciate also what you said about the trauma, because it is a trauma. It's a re-traumatization going in the courtroom. So certainly no judgment for anybody who goes or doesn't go. It's all what someone can individually handle. Doesn't mean they're not supporting and loving JJ and Tylee from afar. Thank you, as always, for being so honest and open with us. Rex Connor, we love talking with you. Check out Rex's podcast that he does with his nephew, Adam Cox, who you've also seen on this show. It's called the Silver Linings Podcast, all in the name of love for JJ and Tylee. Rex, thank you kindly. We'll see you again soon. And coming up next year on Opening Statements, we're talking about who killed Gary Farris. Was it Scott, the son the defense team is blaming? We're going to analyze his testimony together next with a body language expert.
We are in Georgia for the trial of a wife who's accused of killing her husband and then burning his remains.
When you see the opportunity and the motive, money, sex, new life.
Gary Farris was a very prominent Atlanta attorney.
It is common knowledge that they had affairs.
Defendant murdered and desecrated her own husband.
The Burn Pile Murder Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales in the Burn Pile murder trial in Georgia. The jury could get this case very soon, and everyone wants to know who killed Gary Farris. Now, defendant Melody Farris, his wife, is accused of shooting her husband and then putting his body in the family's fire pit in the backyard. But her defense team is pointing the finger at the couple's son, Scott. Now, we saw Scott take the stand. What did you think of his testimony? Let's bring in jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine to give us some analysis. Susan, great to have you here. Let's start by taking a close look at one part of Scott's testimony where he's asked squarely, did you kill your father?
Did you murder your father?
I absolutely did not murder my father. Without a doubt, I loved him.
Did you have anything to do to help your mother dispose of and burn your father?
Absolutely not.
Tell them, not me.
No. Like I said, I love my father. He was the backbone. He was the glue to our family.
I absolutely did not kill my father, is what he said verbatim. Susan, what do you think of that answer?
Well, it's an absolute, but it's also what we look for is contractures. Usually when somebody is telling the truth, they say, I didn't do it. The fact is that I did not. If you notice that you'll see an eyebrow flash, so that's an emphasizer. He looked right at the jury to make sure that they understood that he did not. Followed by the emotion. The emotion can come from a couple of different places. One is guilt. And the other one, of course, is connection with the father. So both of them look very similar. So we're looking at the timing of when he actually states that. So when he says, I did not, raises concern, but it's not enough, Julie, to say that he's actually being deceptive.
Well, I appreciate it, Susan. Okay, let's look at clip number 2 here. He's asked if his sister Amanda, who we saw testify on Monday, supports his mother, and it takes him a while to get the answer out.
Did Amanda support your mom or support y'all?
So I remember for several weeks, it seemed like, Amanda kept saying, well, he just had a heart attack and fell in the fire. And I was like, Amanda, how could he have had a heart attack and fell in the fire when A, they found a bullet lodged in his rib bone, And she's like, well, they could be lying to us. I was like, okay, well, if he had a heart attack and fell in the fire, why was everything gone from the fire pit?
All right, Susan, what do you see in that clip with Scott there?
So when I'm watching him explain that, he's trying to go through the fact that how could he have possibly have done that, I think that he's questioning. The other thing is that when he's looking up, he's searching, he's trying to pull the answer. It's kind of like a tape that's replaying. Then he looks down. That is where kinesthetic, that's where emotion comes in. So when you're pausing, your hesitation, those are indicators of deception, but also can be cognitive load. Like, let me think through this real quick. I'm not going to give you a quick answer, but then when he moves down into the kinesthetic part is the emotion part. I do believe that he is very irritated and he's questioning Melody based on what she was actually saying. So I think there's definitely is some, sibling conflict that's going on that's in addition to his statement.
Makes sense. Susan, clip number 3 here. He's asked about deleting the trail cam video.
She asked me, she asked if I still had that trail camera down there. I was like, oh yeah, let me, I'll go check it. So I don't remember if I hopped on the RTV or I walked down there, but I went down there and checked the trail camera and saw no indication of my dad being on it.
Okay, and I've got notes from folks who have said that it's a routine to delete things on these wildlife trail cams, that it's not suspicious, but here we know the defense side's making it seem suspicious. What do you think?
I think this is where it kind of falls apart for me, because you start off with the shoulder shrug at the very beginning if you backed up a little bit. Also, too, look at how he's looking above. It's like he's bringing his eyebrows down and he's looking up. We see this a lot in suspicion. And also that he's looking up and he's searching for answers. These are problematic. Plus, he's not fluid. When you look at his baseline, when he's talking here, compared to the others, you can see that there is a difference, there's a contrast in his baseline, which then shows me that there's multiple areas, what we call pins, points of interest, that lead to suspect behavior or deceptive behavior. So I'm telling you that what he's telling you is not fully truthful. There is some lies peppered in here. I just don't know what, based on the actual evidence that they have, and line it up to see actually where he's being deceptive. But here it is. This is really concerning for me.
Oh, Susan, this is fascinating hearing you talk. I want to show you a video, and there's no sound with it, so we can just speak over it. This is where Scott gets emotional on the stand. He was very emotional through certain parts of that testimony, and so wondering if the emotion says anything to you, if the points where he broke down, if it shows anything either way.
Well, when we look at him and also we look at Melody, we do see this visceral effect, this strong emotional display of sadness. There is no doubt that he's feeling really sad, and I don't know if I want to say remorseful, because that's not really an emotion. It's a byproduct. So both of them are showing clear indicators of sadness. There's no doubt. It fits all the pieces. All the muscles in the face are moving in the right direction. Both he and Melody, this part is believable and authentic.
Susan Constantine, you're awesome. You gave us such great things to think about as we're getting ready to go to Georgia in just a couple of minutes after this break. Be sure to follow Susan on social media. Susan, we'll see you again very soon. And this is it for this episode of Opening Statements, friends, but feel free to watch it again, share it with your friends. Go to courttv.com to do that. Click on the Shows tab. When we come back, we're going to Georgia together. The defense case continues in the Byrne Powell murder trial. Are we going to see Melody testify?